Welcome to Coach Action's Math. Today we'll be talking about area and perimeter of trapezoids. First off, for those of you who may not remember, a trapezoid is going to have parallel bases and legs that may or may not be congruent. When we've talked about them previously, we've dealt with isosceles trapezoids, which meant that my legs were congruent, but that will not always be the case, as in what we will see a lot today. So, looking at area of a trapezoid. First thing we need to look at is the area is 1/2 of base 1 plus base 2 divided by, or excuse me, not divided by, but multiplied by the height. Or area equals base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. So, an easy way to think about that is we've got a trapezoid. And what we've done when we take base 1 and base 2 and we add them together and divide by 2 is we found the average of our two bases, which would be like this midpoint right here in the middle. And what we've done is we've cut this chunk off the outside and restacked it up here. And then we've cut this chunk off the outside and restacked it up here and turned it into a rectangle in essence with our formula. So we average our two bases, which causes us to take pieces and move them to the places that we can to turn it into a rectangle. So, as we're looking through this, keep that in mind as a part of what you're looking at. So, looking at the area of a trapezoid, first thing we're worried about is our bases. Again, our bases are opposite each other and they are always going to be parallel. So it should be a dead giveaway which ones are your bases. Now, as to which one's base 1 and which one's base 2 makes no difference. I just go 8 and 12. And the height is always going to be noted because you will see that perpendicular marker. If it is not straight up and down, it does not count as our height. In this case, our height is 7. So area formula, we're going to say 1/2 base 1, which is 8, plus base 2, which is 12, times the height. Well, 8 plus 12 is 20. 20 times 7 is 140. 140 divided by 2, or multiplied by 1/2, is going to be 70. So our area would be 70 units squared. Now notice they didn't tell us units, so I'm just going to go ahead and say units squared. Looking down at problem number 2, of course it can't just be that simple. We've got other opportunities here. Say we know that it's an isosceles trapezoid. I know it's an isosceles because of the marks marking the legs congruent. So if this side is 8, this must also be 8. Okay. I can go ahead and draw a line straight down here and straight down here. And if those are perpendicular like I mean to have them, I would have a rectangle in the middle, making this a 12 for this bottom piece in the middle. Now all I've got to do is figure out the outside pieces. So I know one base is 12. I don't know base 2 yet. I don't know the height yet. And therefore I can't figure out the rest of the information. So let's look at what's holding us back. I'm going to take and pull out just this one triangle, this one side here. Notice this one side has some special components to it. If you look at it, it's got a 90-degree angle and a 60-degree angle, and this is 8. So whether you like to use Pythagorean's, or excuse me, not Pythagorean's theorem, special right triangle rules, where I'd say 2x, x, and x radical 3, or whether you like to use sine, cosine, and tangent, it is your choice. You have either option available to you, so use your trigonometry or your special right triangles. Either one is a great option to solve this problem. I'm going to go ahead and use my special triangles this time and say 2x and 8. 2x equals 8, so x would equal 4, and plug it in. And if I look at it, that means that this piece down here is 4, and this piece right here would be 4. My height would be 4 radical 3. So, base 2, it's important to notice that base 2 is made up of 3 pieces. Let me go ahead and grab a different color for you. Base 2 is this entire distance, okay, which is a piece of 4, a piece of 12, and a piece of 4, which is a total of 20. Then looking at the height we marked as 4 radical 3. Now if you have a decimal there instead of leaving the radical sign, that is okay. Just know that your answer is going to end up being rounded and not be an exact answer, but rather an approximate answer. So, looking at my area, we know our formula, 1/2 base of 12 plus base of 20 times the height of 4 radical 3. So that's 32. Half of 32 is 16. 16 times 4 would be 64 times radical 3. So that is my area. And I get in a bad habit of not writing area equals. So make sure you go ahead and do that as well, because here in a minute we're going to have to go back and do another piece. So area equals 64 radical 3 units squared. So when we go back and do our other piece and we start talking about perimeter, if we haven't mentioned that that's area, we might start looking at that wrong or not knowing what's what. So it's real important to denote that that's area. Because now as I'm looking at my perimeter, the perimeter, we're just going to add up the outside. So I'm going to say base 1 is 12 plus base 2 of 20 plus my 2 legs that are congruent. So I'd say 8 plus 8. So that is 16, 36, 46, 48 would be my perimeter. Okay. And that is how you are going to find the area and the perimeter of trapezoids. So, looking down at example number 3. My challenge to you, give this a shot on your own. Take a minute, pause the video, give it a try. Welcome back. So, we know that this is a rectangle right here, so if this bottom piece is 4, this must be 4. Okay. And I have the advantage of knowing this is a height and this is a height because of the fact that that's a rectangle. So knowing that we've got a rectangle here, I just need to find this one extra piece, and I notice the 45 degrees, which tells me that these are congruent. So if I find the height or this piece of the triangle right here to finish out my base, either one's going to help me find the right answer. So let's look at it. I'm going to say the 45 degree angle right there, I'm going to call this the opposite. This is the adjacent and this is the hypotenuse. Again, if you remember your 45, 45, 90 rules, use them. This time I'm going to use trig. So I'm going to say 45 degrees, and I'm going to choose to find my height. I already know base 1 is 4. I need to look for base 2. I'm going to find my height first right here, and I'm going to say the cosine, do it down here, cosine of 45 degrees equals the adjacent, which is our x, over the hypotenuse, which is 3 radical 2. Now, to get x by itself, we would multiply both sides by 3 radical 2, and I would say that 3 radical 2 times the cosine of 45 degrees equals x. Now be very careful when you put this in your calculator. If you don't get out from under the radical sign, you will end up with the wrong answer. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to take my calculator. First thing I'm going to do is go to mode, and I'm going to make sure I'm in degrees. Hit enter to make degrees highlighted. Go second mode to get out. Now that I'm in degrees, I'm going to say 3 radical 2, get out from underneath the radical sign, times the cosine of 45 degrees. And I find that my answer is 3. So x equals 3. Go back and plug it in. This is 3. Well, if I notice, it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So my legs are congruent. If that's 3, this is 3. So to look forward, my height is 3. And my base 2 is this whole distance here, which they told me 4, and I figured out 3. So 4 plus 3 gives me a base 2 of 7. Area equals, I'm going to use my other formula this time and say base 1, 4, plus base 2, 7, times the height of 3 divided by 2. So that's 11 times 3 is 33. 33 divided by 2. The area equals 16.5. units squared. So now let's look at our perimeter. Well, we knew this piece was 3, so this piece must also be 3 because it's a rectangle. I know that because opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are congruent. And I've got 90-degree angles, which means that it must also be true for these opposite sides. Okay, because of my angles and my parallel line conjecture, which we talked about early on this year. So, looking at it, perimeter equals all of the outsides, 3 plus 4 plus 3 radical 2 plus 7. Well, 3 plus 4 plus 7 is 14 plus 3 radical 2. And you are more than welcome to leave your answer right like that, because when you type this in, you'll get a decimal that is actually an irrational number. We know that because it goes on forever and has no rational end. So, I'm going to leave my answer right here, 14 plus 3 radical 2 units. Now, if you were to tell me, well, Coach, I think that is 14 plus 3 radical 2, which is 18.24. If you had told me 18.24 units, I would not discount your answer. That is an approximate answer. So when I have an approximate answer, I'm going to put that tilde in front to say, I know it's not exactly 18.24, but it is very close to 18.24. Because when I type in to the calculator, it's 18.24 ... and continues on. So it is your job to denote if it's an approximate number. If you've typed it in and it's not an exact, you can just put that tilde, and that's a great way of saying approximately. All right, so looking at our median, we've already looked at a median, we just haven't called it a median. So as we're looking at our median, it's segments joining the midpoints of the legs of a trapezoid. So the median is half of base 1 plus base 2. I hope you recognize that because that's a part of our formula. When we talked about it earlier, we used the median to turn our trapezoid, for all intents and purposes, into a rectangle. So we could say base times height. That was our job to find the base of a rectangle that we could turn our trapezoid into. So know that the median is there. So as we look at this, the median is 8. Okay? And the height is 8. So the benefit of the doubt here, we just turn this into a rectangle. We've cut this chunk off. Okay? We've cut this chunk off right here, and we've put it up here. Notice how those two pieces are congruent. Notice how there's 90-degree angles. Those are congruent triangles. So we've cut off the outside and added the inside. We've cut off the outside and added the inside. So if I have my median and I have my height, I can always say that the area of a trapezoid is the median times the height. Because the median is half of base 1 plus base 2. So median is 8, height is 8. So the area of my triangle is 8 times 8, or 64 units squared. Just another way to look at it. So let's look down at example number 5. My suggestion is you give this one a shot, see what you can do. All right, hopefully you pause the video. Welcome back. A trapezoid has an area of 7 centimeters cubed. So area equals base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. I can do that, same idea. Well, base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 is the median. So area equals the median times the height of 5. Well, that's easy. If the trapezoid has an area of 7 centimeters squared and it has a height of 5, divide both sides by 5. And the median must equal 7 divided by 5, 1.4 centimeters. This has been Coach Eichner's Math. I appreciate you watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day.